The digital clock glowed 3:17 a.m. when Celeste's trembling hand shook me awake. In our 12 years of marriage, I'd never seen her eyes that wide, that wild. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, or maybe become one. "Graham, please, just come with me. Don't ask questions." I blinked at my wife, noting the mascara streaked down her cheeks, the way her designer nightgown hung askew on her shoulders. Celeste Harlan never looked disheveled. Even during her worst flu, she managed to look like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Did something happen to your parents?" "No questions, Graham. Please, just trust me. Get dressed, now." Trust. That was rich, coming from a woman who'd been working late every night for the past 6 months, who'd suddenly developed a passion for weekend business conferences, who'd started password protecting her phone like it contained state secrets. But I'm an electronics engineer, not a marriage counselor. I solve problems by gathering data, analyzing patterns, finding logical solutions, and right now, the data suggested my wife was having some kind of breakdown. "Okay," I said, rolling out of our king-sized bed. "Give me 2 minutes." I pulled on jeans and a Red Sox t-shirt while Celeste paced by the window, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold her pieces together. Outside, Boston's suburbs slept under a blanket of October fog, the kind that made streetlights look like dying stars. "Should I grab my phone?" I asked, reaching for the nightstand. "No!" The word exploded from her lips. No phones, no wallet, nothing. Now that was interesting. In my line of work, designing security systems for corporate clients, you learn to recognize when someone's trying to avoid leaving digital footprints. But why would my wife, a public relations executive who lived and breathed social media, suddenly want to go off the grid? "Celeste, you're scaring me. What's going on?" She turned from the window, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? Maybe both. "I'll explain in the car. Just, please, Graham, I need you to trust me one more time." One more time. Interesting choice of words. I followed her downstairs, through our comfortable suburban home, with its lived-in furniture and my electronics workshop in the basement. Everything looked normal. The coffee maker set to brew at 6 a.m., yesterday's mail still scattered on the kitchen counter. My latest project, a smart home security upgrade, spread across the dining room table. But nothing felt normal. Celeste grabbed her keys from the hook by the garage door, her hands still trembling. I noticed she'd changed from her nightgown into dark jeans and a black sweater. When had she done that? How long had she been awake before waking me? "I'll drive," she said, which was another red flag. Celeste hated driving at night, claimed the headlights gave her migraines. We climbed into her silver BMW and she backed out of our driveway with the careful precision of someone trying very hard not to attract attention. No squealing tires, no racing engine, just smooth, deliberate movements that screamed guilty conscience. "Now can you tell me what's happening?" I asked as we turned onto Route 95, heading toward downtown Boston. "I made a mistake, Graham, a big one, and now I need to fix it." "What kind of mistake?" She was quiet for so long I thought she hadn't heard me. Then, "The kind that ruins everything." We drove in silence after that, through empty streets and past closed businesses, the fog growing thicker as we approached the city. I watched my wife's profile in the dashboard light, noting the tight set of her jaw, the way she kept checking the rearview mirror. 23 minutes later, she turned into the warehouse district near the harbor. This was not a place you came at 3 a.m. unless you were up to something illegal, immoral, or incredibly stupid. Possibly all three. She parked behind a brick building that looked like it had been abandoned since the Carter administration, its windows boarded up, graffiti covering every available surface. But there was another car already there, a white Mercedes I recognized immediately. Bianca's car. Bianca Walsh, Celeste's best friend and co-worker at Sterling Communications, the woman who'd been Celeste's maid of honor, who came to our house for dinner every month, who always asked about my work with just a little too much interest. "Bianca's here?" I asked. Celeste's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Graham, I need you to know that whatever happens in there, I never wanted to hurt you. You're a good man, a better man than I deserved." Past tense. She was talking about me in past tense. "Celeste, what the hell is going on?" She turned off the engine and looked at me with eyes full of tears and something that might have been pity. "Inside, now. And Graham, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The fog swirled around us as we got out of the car, thick enough to muffle sound and hide secrets. I followed my wife toward a side door that stood slightly ajar, yellow light spilling out into the darkness. That's when I heard the voices inside, Bianca's nervous chatter and a man's voice I didn't recognize, deep and confident and completely in control. My wife had brought me to a trap. The warehouse smelled like rust and betrayal. Someone had set up a makeshift meeting area in the center of the vast space. A few folding chairs, a card table, and a couple of battery-powered lanterns that cast dancing shadows on the brick walls. But it was the people in those chairs that made my blood freeze. My parents, Frank and Dorothy Harlan, both 73 years old, sat with their hands zip-tied behind their backs and duct tape over their mouths. My mother's eyes were wide with terror above the silver tape. My father looked furious enough to bite through steel. "What the hell?" "Easy there, Graham." The voice belonged to a man stepping out of the shadows, and I recognized him immediately from Celeste's work parties. Quentin Prentice, venture capitalist, serial entrepreneur, and the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits to casual barbecues. He was holding a pistol like he knew how to use it. Bianca stood near my parents, wringing her hands and avoiding my eyes. She was dressed in all black, like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was. "Sit down," Quentin said, gesturing to an empty chair with the gun barrel. "Like hell I will. Untie my parents. Now." Quentin smiled, the kind of expression a shark might make if sharks could smile. "You're not really in a position to make demands, are you? Your lovely wife here has been telling me all about your little electronics business. Quite profitable, from what I hear. And that inheritance from your uncle last year? Very nice nest egg." I looked at Celeste, who was standing by the door like she might bolt at any second. "You told him about Uncle Ray's money?" "She told me about a lot of things," Quentin said. "Sit down, Graham. We have business to discuss." I sat, but only because my parents were still tied up and this maniac had a gun. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was planned, organized, personal. "Here's how this works," Quentin continued, settling into the chair across from me like we were having a friendly chat. "You're going to sign over your business assets to a company I control. You're going to transfer that inheritance money to an account I'll specify. And you're going to do it all very quietly, without involving lawyers or banks or anyone else who might ask inconvenient questions." "And if I don't?" Quentin looked at my parents. "Well, let's just say your folks might have an accident on their way home tonight. Terrible thing, elderly drivers on these foggy roads. So many accidents this time of year." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "This is why you wanted me to leave my phone at home. No way to call for help, no GPS tracking." "Smart man," Bianca said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was shaky, but there was something else there. Excitement? "I always said you were too smart for your own good." "How long?" I asked Celeste. "How long have you been planning this?" My wife finally looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want it to go this far, Graham. I swear. It was supposed to be simple. A quick divorce, a fair split of assets. But then Quentin said we could have everything, and You got greedy," I finished. "Both of you." "It's not about greed," Quentin said. "It's about taking what we deserve. Do you have any idea how much money your little security company has made in the past 5 years? how much that government contract is worth, and you just sit there in your suburban house, playing with your gadgets, never thinking bigger. While you've been thinking about my wife? Quentin's smile widened. Among other things. Show him, Bianca. Bianca pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Then she turned it toward me, and I saw something that made my stomach drop through the floor. A video. Celeste and Quentin, in what looked like a hotel room, doing things that definitely weren't covered in our marriage vows. The timestamp showed it was from 3 months ago. There are dozens more, Bianca said, almost apologetically. Different hotels, different dates. Celeste has been very cooperative. I looked at my wife, who couldn't meet my eyes. How long, Celeste? How long have you been sleeping with him? 18 months, she whispered. 18 months. A year and a half of lies, of fake smiles over breakfast, of working late and business trips and girls' nights out that were really rendezvous with this smug bastard who thought he could steal my life. And Bianca's been helping, Quentin continued. Feeding us information about your business, your clients, your finances. Amazing how much pillow talk reveals, isn't it? I remembered all those dinner parties, all those casual questions about my work. Bianca asking about client contracts, about my security protocols, about which companies paid the most. I'd thought she was just making conversation. You've been planning this for months, I said. Over a year, actually, Quentin corrected. Good plans take time. And this is a very good plan. You sign the papers, we disappear with your money, and everyone lives happily ever after. Well, most of us. He gestured to my parents again, and I saw my mother flinch. There's just one problem with your plan, I said. What's that? I smiled for the first time since walking into this nightmare. You assumed I'd come here alone. That's when the side door burst open, and my old college roommate Mick Brennan stepped inside, his service weapon drawn and his ex-cop instincts on full display. Boston PD, everyone on the ground! Chaos erupted. Bianca screamed and dove behind the table. Quentin spun toward Mick, raising his pistol, but I was already moving. I tackled him from the side, sending us both crashing into the folding chairs. The gun went off, the shot echoing through the warehouse like thunder. But it was aimed at the ceiling, not at anyone important. Mick had Quentin's accomplice, some muscle-bound guy I hadn't even noticed lurking in the shadows, face down on the concrete within seconds. Quentin was trying to get up, but I had 41 years of frustration and about 3 minutes of pure rage fueling me. I grabbed Bianca's phone before she could delete the videos and smashed it against the brick wall for good measure. Then I started untying my parents while Mick zip-tied Quentin's hands with the same restraints they'd used on my folks. How? Quentin gasped, his face pressed against the dirty floor. Electronics engineer, remember? I said, helping my mother to her feet. I've been tracking Celeste's phone for months. GPS, call logs, text messages. Amazing what you can learn when someone doesn't know you're watching. My father pulled the tape off his mouth and immediately started cursing in 3 languages. My mother just hugged me and cried. I knew something was wrong when she started deleting her browser history, I continued, enjoying the look of disbelief on Quentin's face. Nobody deletes their browser history unless they're hiding something, so I installed some monitoring software on our home network. Every device, every connection, every dirty little secret. Celeste was still standing by the door, looking like she wanted to disappear into the fog. I saw the hotel reservations, the credit card charges, the text messages. I knew about the affair months ago. I just didn't know about the kidnapping part until tonight. Then why did you come? Bianca asked from behind the overturned table. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, and because I wanted witnesses to your confession. Amazing how much people talk when they think they're in control. I pulled out my phone, the one Celeste had told me to leave at home, and stopped the recording app. Every word, I said, the threats, the confession, the whole conspiracy, all recorded in high-definition audio. Quentin's face went white. You can't use that in court. It's entrapment. Actually, it's not, Mick said, hauling the muscle-bound accomplice to his feet. Private citizen, public place, no expectation of privacy. Plus, you just confessed to kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy. In front of witnesses. I looked at Celeste, who was crying harder now. 18 months, Celeste. 18 months of lying to my face, planning to destroy my life, putting my parents in danger. For what? Money? Him? She opened her mouth to answer, but I held up my hand. Actually, don't. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any more lies. That's when she ran. Celeste bolted through the door like her life depended on it. Which maybe it did. I was right behind her, my sneakers slapping against wet pavement as she sprinted toward her BMW. She had the keys. I had longer legs and 12 years of pent-up frustration. She made it to the car and fumbled with the door handle, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the keys twice. By the time she got the engine started, I was already diving into the passenger seat. "Get out!" she screamed, throwing the car in reverse. "Not a chance. We're going to finish this conversation." She backed out of the parking space with me, half hanging out the open door, then slammed it into drive and floored it. The BMW shot forward into the foggy night, tires squealing on the wet asphalt. "Where are we going, Celeste? Back to Quentin's place? Going to warn him that the plan fell apart?" "Shut up!" She took a hard right onto Atlantic Avenue, the car sliding slightly on the slick road. "Just shut up and let me think." "Think? Now you want to think? Where was all this thinking 18 months ago when you decided to start screwing my business partner's friend?" She glanced at me, her face streaked with mascara and tears. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Really? How was it supposed to happen? You were going to steal my money and run off with Loverboy, but you were going to do it nicely?" Another hard turn, this time onto Beacon Street. We were heading toward the financial district now, toward the gleaming towers where people like Quentin played their money games. "He said we could be together," she sobbed. "He said he loved me. He said you'd never give me the life I deserved." "What life? We have a beautiful house, 2 cars, money in the bank. What more did you want?" "Everything!" The word exploded from her lips. "I wanted everything, Graham. The penthouse apartment, the European vacations, the designer clothes, the respect. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who's satisfied with ordinary?" Ordinary. 12 years of marriage reduced to one word. "So you decided to take it. All of it. Even if it meant destroying me in the process." She was driving faster now, weaving between the few cars on the road. The fog was getting thicker as we approached downtown, turning the streetlights into ghostly halos. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "The plan was just to get divorced, take half of everything. But then Quentin showed me how much you were really worth, and I realized I could have it all. We could have it all." "By kidnapping my parents? By threatening to kill them? That was Quentin's idea. I told him it was too much, but he said it was the only way to make sure you cooperated. He said it would be quick and clean and nobody would get hurt." Quick and clean, like a business transaction. "And you believed him? You actually thought you could steal everything from me and then just disappear into the sunset?" She took another turn, and I realized where we were going. Quentin's building, a 40-story glass tower in the heart of Boston's financial district. His penthouse apartment, with its panoramic views and imported marble floors. "He has connections," she said. "Offshore accounts, shell companies. He could have made us disappear." "Made us disappear or made you disappear? What makes you think he wouldn't have gotten rid of you once he had my money?" For the first time since we'd left the warehouse, she looked uncertain. "He loves me," she said, but her voice was smaller now, less sure. "He loves your access to my bank accounts. Big difference." We pulled into the parking garage beneath Quentin's building. Celeste used a key card to get through the security gate. Apparently, she'd been here often enough to get resident privileges. What's the plan now? I asked as we rode the elevator to the 40th floor. Hide out in Loverboy's apartment until Mick and the real cops track you down? I don't know, she screamed. I don't know, okay? Everything's ruined. Everything's falling apart. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that probably cost more to decorate than most people make in a year. Celeste led me to apartment 4012, using another keycard to open the door. Quentin's place was exactly what I'd expected. All glass and steel and expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of Boston Harbor, even through the fog. And parked in the building's private lot, 40 stories below, was Quentin's pride and joy. A cherry-red Porsche 911 Turbo that he'd spent countless dinner parties bragging about. Nice view, I said, walking to the windows. Great place to watch your whole world fall apart. Celeste collapsed onto a white leather sofa that probably cost more than my car. What happens now? Do you turn me in? Do I go to prison? That depends. On what? I turned away from the windows and looked at my wife, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time. On how much more damage you want to do on your way down. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message from Mick. Cops are here. Q and friends in custody. Where are you? I showed Celeste the message. Decision time. We can go back, you can confess everything, and maybe the prosecutor will go easy on you. Or you can keep running and make everything worse. She stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked up at me with something that might have been hope. If I cooperate, if I testify against Quentin, what happens to us? To our marriage? I almost laughed. After everything that had happened tonight, after 18 months of lies and betrayal and a kidnapping plot, she was still thinking there might be an us. Celeste, our marriage ended the first time you slept with him. Tonight just made it official. She started crying again, but these weren't the panicked tears from the warehouse. These were the tears of someone who'd finally realized that actions have consequences. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Graham. I never meant for it to go this far. Yeah, I said, heading for the door. You keep saying that. But I wasn't quite ready to leave yet. I had one more stop to make. The parking garage was poorly lit and completely deserted at 4 a.m. Perfect for what I had in mind. Quentin's Porsche sat in its designated spot like a red jewel, polished to mirror brightness, and probably worth more than most people's houses. He'd spent hours at various social gatherings describing its engine specifications, its acceleration, its precision, German engineering. Time to give it some American modifications. I'd grabbed a few items from Quentin's kitchen before leaving the apartment, a bag of sugar, some dish soap, and a bottle of olive oil. Amazing what you can accomplish with basic household supplies when you put your mind to it. The sugar went into the gas tank. Not enough to destroy the engine, but certainly enough to make it run rough for a while. The dish soap got squirted all over the windshield and windows. It would wash off eventually, but not before spelling out cheater in big, soapy letters. The olive oil was for the door handles and the driver's seat. Nothing permanent, just slippery enough to be annoying. I was admiring my handiwork when I heard footsteps echoing through the garage. Celeste appeared from behind a concrete pillar, her face pale but determined. Vandalizing his car isn't going to make you feel better, she said. You're right, but it's a start. Graham, we need to talk. No, we really don't. We've done enough talking for one lifetime. I started walking toward the elevator, but she grabbed my arm. Please, just listen to me for 1 minute. 1 minute, and then I'll leave you alone forever. I stopped, more out of curiosity than any desire to hear what she had to say. I know I can't undo what I did, she began. I know I can't take back the lies or the betrayal or the pain I've caused. But I need you to know that I did love you once. In the beginning, I really did love you. Once upon a time, I said. Great start to a fairy tale. Too bad this one doesn't have a happy ending. I got lost somewhere along the way. I started wanting things I couldn't have, and I convinced myself that I deserved them, that we deserved them. We? I told myself I was doing it for both of us, that if I could just get us more money, a better lifestyle, then we could be happy again. I looked at her standing there in the fluorescent light of the parking garage, still beautiful, even with her makeup ruined and her perfect hair disheveled. For just a moment, I could almost see the woman I'd married 12 years ago, the one who'd laughed at my jokes and supported my dreams and made me believe in forever. Almost. The problem with that logic, I said, is that I was already happy. You were the one who wasn't satisfied. I know that now, but by the time I realized what I was doing, it was too late. Quentin had his hooks in me, and I couldn't see a way out. There's always a way out, Celeste. You just didn't want to take it because it would have meant giving up what you thought you deserved. She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the distant sound of sirens getting closer. The real police, not just Mick pretending to be a cop. What happens now? She asked. Now you go upstairs and wait for the police to arrest you. You cooperate fully, you testify against Quentin, and you hope the judge believes you were just a stupid, greedy woman instead of a criminal mastermind. And then? And then you live with the consequences of your choices, just like the rest of us. The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside. Celeste made no move to follow me. Graham? I held the door open and waited. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for all of it. You deserved better. Yeah, I said as the doors started to close. I did. The last thing I saw was Celeste standing alone in the parking garage, next to the vandalized Porsche that represented everything she'd thought she wanted and everything she'd lost trying to get it. 20 minutes later, I was back at the warehouse watching Quentin, Bianca, and the muscle-bound accomplice get loaded into police cars. My parents were giving statements to detectives, my mother still shaky, but my father already planning lawsuits. Mick found me standing by Celeste's BMW, staring at nothing in particular. "Where's your wife?" he asked. "Waiting for her ride downtown. She'll be along shortly." "You okay?" I thought about that question. Was I okay? My marriage was over, my trust had been shattered, and I'd just spent the worst night of my life discovering how little I'd really known the woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years. But I was alive. My parents were safe. The bad guys were going to jail, and I still had my business, my house, and my self-respect. "Yeah," I said. "I think I'm going to be fine." But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. 3 days later, I was sitting in my favorite booth at Murphy's Tavern, nursing a beer and watching the best show in town unfold on the big screen TV above the bar. Channel 5's Morning News was running a story about the executive kidnapping plot that had rocked Boston's business community. They had footage of Quentin being perp-walked out of the courthouse, his expensive suit wrinkled and his perfect hair disheveled. The anchor was reading from a prepared statement about charges of kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy, but the real entertainment was happening right there in the bar. "I always knew there was something off about that Celeste," said Mrs. DeWitt, my 78-year-old neighbor, who'd apparently appointed herself the neighborhood's chief gossip distributor. She was holding court at a table near the window, surrounded by half a dozen other retirees who hung on her every word. The way she dressed, the way she talked down to people, like she was too good for the rest of us. "And that friend of hers, Bianca," added Tom McCarthy, who lived 3 houses down from me, always asking questions about everyone's business. Should have known she was up to something. Darlene Kowalski, Murphy's day shift bartender and the unofficial keeper of all local secrets, was wiping down glasses and adding her own commentary. "Graham's better off without her," she announced to the room. "Man works hard, treats people decent, minds his own business. He deserves someone who appreciates what she's got." I'd been coming to Murphy's for years, but I'd never been the center of this much attention. Usually I was just the quiet guy in the corner booth, the one who fixed people's security systems and helped elderly neighbors with their computer problems. Now I was the hero of the neighborhood's favorite soap opera. My phone buzzed with another text message, I'd been getting them all morning. Friends, clients, distant relatives who'd seen the news coverage. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay, if I needed anything, if there was anything they could do to help. It was nice, in a weird way. For 12 years, I'd been Celeste's husband at social gatherings, the guy who stood quietly in the corner while she worked the room with her PR skills and her perfect smile. Now, people were seeing me as my own person, maybe for the first time. The bell above Murphy's front door chimed, and I looked up to see Detective Sarah Martinez walking in. She'd been the lead investigator on the case, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who'd seen enough human stupidity to fill several textbooks. She slid into the booth across from me and signaled Darlene for coffee. "Thought you'd want to know," she said. "Your wife's lawyer worked out a plea deal this morning." "What kind of deal?" "Conspiracy and accessory charges. She'll do 18 months, probably out in 12 with good behavior. Could have been a lot worse." 18 months. The same amount of time she'd been cheating on me. There was a certain poetic justice in that. "What about Quentin?" Martinez smiled grimly. "He's looking at 5 to 7 years. Kidnapping charges don't disappear just because nobody got hurt. Plus, the DA found some irregularities in his business dealings that the SEC is very interested in." "And Bianca?" 2 years, plus she's been disbarred from working in any financial services capacity. Turns out she was skimming from client accounts at Sterling Communications, too. I sipped my beer and processed this information. Justice wasn't always swift, but sometimes it was thorough. "There's something else," Martinez continued. "We found evidence that this wasn't their first time. Looks like Quentin and your wife ran a similar scam on at least 2 other men over the past 5 years. You're actually lucky. The other victims lost everything." "Lucky." "Right. The other victims are filing a civil suit," she added. "You might want to consider joining them. Could recover some damages." "I'll think about it." Martinez finished her coffee and stood up. "For what it's worth, you handled this better than most people would have. Keeping your cool, gathering evidence, thinking strategically instead of just reacting emotionally. That's why we caught them." After she left, I sat in the booth and watched the news coverage continue. They were interviewing Quentin's business partners now, all of them expressing shock and disappointment and carefully distancing themselves from the scandal. Amazing how quickly people could disappear when the spotlight got too hot. My phone rang, and I saw it was my lawyer, David Chen. "Graham, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first?" "Hit me with the bad news." "The divorce is going to be complicated. Even with the criminal charges, Celeste is still entitled to some marital assets. We're looking at probably 6 months of legal wrangling." "And the good news?" "Sterling Communications just called. They want to hire you to audit their entire security system and implement new safeguards. Apparently, they're very interested in making sure nothing like this ever happens again. It's a 6-figure contract." I almost laughed. Celeste's former employer wanted to pay me to clean up the mess she'd helped create. Sometimes the universe had a sense of humor. "Tell them I'll take it," I said. "There's more. Word's getting around about how you handled this situation. I've had 3 other companies call today asking about your services. Looks like this whole nightmare might end up being the best thing that ever happened to your business." After I hung up, I looked around Murphy's Tavern at the faces of my neighbors, people I'd known for years, but never really talked to. They were looking at me with something I hadn't seen before: respect. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like myself again. But I still wasn't finished. The knock on my door came at exactly 8 p.m. on a rainy Thursday evening, 2 weeks after the arrests. I'd been expecting it, actually. Sooner or later, Celeste would show up wanting to talk, wanting to explain, wanting something. She stood on my front porch looking like a ghost of her former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wasn't wearing any makeup. For the first time in years, she looked her actual age. "Hello, Graham." "Celeste," Can I come in? Just for a few minutes? I stepped aside and let her enter our house. My house now, according to the preliminary divorce papers. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, taking in the comfortable furniture and family photos and all the ordinary things she'd decided weren't enough. "It looks good," she said. "Peaceful. What do you want, Celeste?" She sat down on the couch where we'd watched 1,000 movies together, where we'd planned our future and shared our dreams and pretended we were happy. "I wanted to see you before I go away, to try to explain." "You've had 2 weeks to explain. What's left to say?" She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she looked up, her eyes were red but dry. "I've been thinking about when it all started going wrong, when I stopped being grateful for what we had and started wanting what other people had. I think it was at the Sterling Christmas party 3 years ago." I remembered that party. Celeste had spent the entire evening comparing our life to her co-workers' lives, pointing out who had the bigger house, the better car, the more expensive jewelry. I saw how Quentin lived, the freedom he had, the respect people showed him, and I started feeling like I was settling for less than I deserved, like you were holding me back from the life I was supposed to have. "So you decided to trade me in for a newer model?" It wasn't that simple. At first it was just flirting, just enjoying the attention from someone who seemed so much more sophisticated than... She stopped herself, but I knew how that sentence ended. "More sophisticated than your boring husband who was satisfied with ordinary." I didn't mean it like that. "Yeah, you did. And you know what? You were right. I am ordinary. I work hard, I pay my bills. I take care of the people I love. I don't need a penthouse apartment or a sports car to feel good about myself." I sat down in the chair across from her, the same chair where I'd spent countless evenings reading while she watched her reality TV shows and planned our social calendar. "The thing is, Celeste, ordinary isn't a bad thing. Ordinary is reliable. Ordinary is honest. Ordinary doesn't kidnap people's parents for money." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you and your parents and everyone who trusted me. I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life." "Yes, you are. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I was with Quentin, even when I was planning to leave, part of me still loved the man I married." I looked at this woman who'd shared my bed for 12 years, who'd promised to love and honor and cherish me until death do us part, who'd thrown it all away for money and excitement, and a man who'd discarded her the moment things got complicated. Love isn't a feeling, Celeste. It's a choice, and you chose something else. She started crying then, quiet tears that ran down her cheeks and dripped onto her hands. "I know. I chose wrong. I chose everything wrong." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain against the windows and the tick of the grandfather clock my parents had given us for our 5th anniversary. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "Now you go to prison, you serve your time, you think about what you did, and hopefully you learn something from it. And after that? After that, you start over, somewhere else, with someone else, as someone else. Because the woman I married is gone, and she's not coming back." Celeste stood up slowly, like an old woman with arthritis. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up our wedding photo, the one where we looked so young and happy and full of hope. "We were good together once," she said. "Once upon a time," I agreed. "But this isn't a fairy tale, and there's no happily ever after." She set the photo down and headed for the door. I didn't get up to see her out. "Graham?" I looked at her standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the porch light. "I hope you find someone who appreciates what she has, someone who doesn't need more than ordinary. I hope you find peace with the choices you made." After she left, I sat in my chair and listened to her car drive away. Then I got up, walked to the mantelpiece, and put our wedding photo in a drawer where I wouldn't have to look at it anymore. Some chapters end with dramatic flourishes, others just end. But I wasn't quite done yet. There was still one more thing I needed to do. The next morning, I drove to Sterling Communications and walked into the conference room where Celeste had worked for 8 years. Her former colleagues were there, the same people who'd attended our dinner parties, who'd smiled and laughed and pretended to be our friends while one of them was stealing my secrets and planning my destruction. "Graham," said Jennifer Walsh, the company president. "Thank you for coming. We're all so sorry about what happened." "Sorry enough to do something about it?" "Of course. Whatever you need." I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room's presentation screen. Then I pulled up a detailed analysis I'd spent the past 2 weeks preparing. "This is a complete audit of your security systems," I said. "Physical security, digital security, personnel security. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every way someone like Bianca could have accessed confidential information." The room was dead quiet as I walked them through 47 separate security failures, from unlocked file cabinets to unencrypted email servers to employees who shared passwords like they were trading baseball cards. The good news is, it's all fixable. The bad news is, it's going to cost you about $500,000 and 6 months of intensive work. Jennifer Walsh looked like she was going to be sick. $500,000? That's the price of doing business with people you can't trust. You can pay me to fix it, or you can wait for the next Bianca to come along and steal everything that isn't nailed down. I closed my laptop and stood up. "I'll send you a formal proposal by the end of the week. You can take it or leave it, but either way, my conscience is clear." As I walked out of the building where my wife had planned my destruction, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Freedom. 3 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern again, celebrating the completion of the Sterling Communications security overhaul and the signing of 2 new corporate contracts. My business had tripled in size, I'd hired 3 new employees, and I'd just put a down payment on a cabin in New Hampshire where I could go fishing on weekends. Darlene brought me a beer without being asked and sat down across from me. "You look happy," she said. "I am happy. Weird, right?" "Not weird at all. You got rid of dead weight and found out what you're really worth." "Speaking of dead weight, any word on our former neighbors?" Darlene grinned. "Oh, you're going to love this. Quentin got transferred to a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. Apparently, he's working in the prison laundry and sharing a cell with a guy who got busted for running a Ponzi scheme." "And Celeste?" "Women's Correctional Facility in Framingham. Word is she's teaching a literacy program for other inmates. Maybe she's actually learning something." I raised my beer in a mock toast. "To new beginnings. To getting what you deserve." As I drove home that night, I thought about the past 6 months and everything that had changed. I'd lost a wife but gained self-respect. I'd been betrayed but discovered who my real friends were. I'd been threatened but found out how strong I really was. The house was quiet when I got home, but it was a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence of secrets and lies. I made myself dinner, watched a baseball game, and went to bed at a reasonable hour. No questions after midnight, no mysterious phone calls, no drama. Just ordinary life, lived by an ordinary man who'd learned that sometimes ordinary is exactly enough. 6 months after that, I married Darlene Kowalski in a small ceremony at Murphy's Tavern, surrounded by friends and neighbors who'd watched me survive the worst betrayal of my life and come out stronger on the other side. Celeste sent a card from prison. I threw it away without reading it. Some stories end with revenge, others end with justice. The best ones end with the realization that the best revenge is living well, and the truest justice is finding out who you really are when everything else falls away. I found out I was someone worth keeping,